Hello and welcome back to another episode of Gazeta from Gazeta Brazil. I'm Ewan Marshall and you may remember me from such broadcasts as the Internacional São Paulo game on BT Sport this weekend. No? Nobody? Fair enough. Well, today we're going to have a look back at the 2016 Olympic Games, covering the results of the men's and the women's in the football, and we're going to see just how much that gold medal means to Brazil. So stay tuned. So if you recall our last video, Brazil got off to a terrible start in their group stage with 2 goalless draws in their opening 2 games. Their more experienced players came under a lot of criticism, as did the 2 young strikers Gabriel and Gabriel Jesus. But on the 3rd game, Jesus rose again and Brazil stormed to a 4-0 victory against Denmark to put them through to the knockout stages. And in just a matter of seconds, they went from being the only side in the tournament not to have scored a goal to being the only side in the tournament not to have conceded a goal. Narrative 180 that I think Ryan Lochte actually might be quite proud of.
It's how you wanna make it look like.
What followed were 2 fairly comfortable wins over Colombia and Honduras, which set up that mouth-watering final against Germany, who of course gubbed Brazil 7-1 only 2 years ago. Now it was an interesting final. Brazil dominated most of the game, although you could hear those 70,000 bums squeaking in the Maracanã Stadium every time Germany got anywhere near the Brazil penalty area. So it finished 1-1 in normal time and went all the way to penalties. Fittingly, it was team captain Neymar who scored the decisive spot kick to give Brazil their very first Olympic gold medal in football.
Muito feliz, mas é isso aí. Fazer o quê? Agora vou ter que me engolir.
Hold on, what was that?
Agora vou ter que me engolir.
So how did Brazil turn it around? After those 2 insipid performances in their opening group games, how did they go from that to what was in the end a pretty well-deserved gold medal? Did they just get the whole squad around and watch that last Gazeta Brazil episodes? Well, I can't take all the credit, as of course Rogério Micali, the team coach, deserves his fair share of the kudos, as after that second game against Iraq he changed Brazil's system. He took out a central midfielder and brought in Grêmio's Luan, an attacking midfielder, and went to a kind of 4-2-4 situation, bringing the defence and the midfield a little bit higher up the pitch, leaving Brazil a lot more compact, and it really worked to their advantage. And particularly in the final, we saw Brazil's more experienced players, Neymar and Renato Augusto, really stepping up to the plate and helping their team on to victory. Now, the international reaction has been a bit dismissive about this gold medal, with some even criticising Brazil for over-celebrating their win, which I think is a bit unfair, because even though it is just Olympic football and the Germany side they were up against are greener than a Rio de Janeiro diving pool, but Brazil knew all of that already, so it wasn't so much of a 7 each, more of a 7-2, and still that win on Saturday, it still means something to the Brazilian fans. After a series of embarrassing defeats and spineless performances, the national team have finally won something. It gives the fans something to cheer about, and if the Seleção are going to turn things around, they're really going to need the Brazilian public on side. What's more, it shows that talent is coming through, as actually 7 of the gold medalists have now been called up for the senior squad for the upcoming World Cup qualifiers. And it's a bit rich to criticise Brazil for celebrating Olympic gold, as I can only imagine what the celebrations would have been like had Team GB won the gold in London 2012 instead of, being knocked out in the quarterfinals. Now, onto the women's team, as the last time we spoke they were getting all sorts of praise for their free scoring start to the tournament. They put 3 goals past China in the opening game before scoring 5 against Sweden, the eventual silver medalists. But things started to get a little bit difficult after that. Their main centre forward Cristiane was injured, and from that game on they looked a bit toothless in attack. They really struggled to score a lot of goals. So they sneaked past Australia in the quarterfinals, beating them on penalty kicks, and then in their second encounter with Sweden in the semis, they were outthought by a less talented side, and said goodbye to the tournament at the semi-final stage, missing out on the final. Then in the bronze medal match, they were beaten 2-1 by Canada, one of the more impressive sides in the tournament. So at the end of all that, the Brazil side did leave empty-handed, but believe it or not, 4th place for this current women's team is actually quite a good result, as they were never favourites to begin with. Well, most importantly, the support received by the national team was greater than anything we've ever seen in Brazilian women's football. But the question is now, where does Brazilian women's football go from here? Because the ageing stars like Marta, Cristiane and Formiga, they don't have much left in their careers. They'll probably be hanging their boots up quite soon. And although there is talent coming through, Barcelona's Andressa Alves in particular had a really good Olympic tournament. Though there is that talent coming through, there's not quite enough to replace big names such as Marta, and they won't be able to rely on individual skill in future tournaments. Now, the sad reality is that the women's game in Brazil is horribly underfunded, and without the medal, that means that the investment that is currently in place could suffer further cuts. So that's all for this week. Leave us a comment below, let us know what you thought about the Olympic Games. How much does this medal really mean to Brazil? And why are Americans in such denial the fact that Brazil did in fact invent the airplane? And what about the Zika virus? You know, Zika, remember? That thing that made the Olympics like really unsafe, so no one should come to Rio. What happened to that? And also, more importantly, what's going to happen to Ryan Lochte?
I can't wait until I'm done swimming, then I can go to the market to do a little shopping.
Anyway, subscribe to the channel for more Gazeta Brazil goodness each week. And also, don't forget to like the Facebook page, as we've got some interesting developments coming up over the next few weeks, and we'll keep you all informed there. We're also on Twitter and Instagram, so make sure to follow us. And until next time, I'm Ewan Marshall saying ciao e até mais. Thank God that's over. I'm going to go to the market, do a little shopping.